Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons and horror. Today, we'll explore the mysteries and secrets of the faith and Church of Ezra, one of the main religions of the Lands of the Mists. Before we start, I would like to once more thank John Mangrum, one of the great authors of the Ravenloft setting, who authorized me to use his written material from the article Anchors of Fate in the netbook Book of Secrets. This excellent material can be found on the Secrets of the Kagatain website, whose links you can find below in the video description. Are you ready? Pursued by Ivanoboritsi minions, and under the effects of a slow and lethal poison from Ivan Dislisnia, we are sheltered by Torret Johann Severin in the basements of the great Cathedral of Ezra. The clergyman of Ezra listens to our lament and confessions, and offers us assistance with his divine magic. Thanks to the divine blessings of his goddess, our bodies are cleansed of Ivan's powerful toxins. Torret Johann seems very concerned about our search for the Amulet of Souls, our profane pact with Inahira, and our condition of lycanthropy, and revealed to us about Ezra's wisdom and the history of his faith, trying to guide us on a more enlightened path. Hour of the Raven. I do not fear the night, for her light is a sword that cleaves the darkness. The Church of Ezra is one of the religions originally created for the Ravenloft camping setting, and is the most widespread religion in the Lands of the Mists, being found in almost every domain in the core. It is a fictional religion, created for a fantasy setting, and it has no relation to true religions in our world. However, considering that most of the core domains are inspired by European cultures during the Middle Ages, it is possible to draw parallels between the Church of Ezra with the Catholic Church and Christianity in Europe during this period. This faith believes in the deity Ezra, a mortal woman who rose to divine status by sacrificing herself and merging her essence with the mists. The iconography of the faith portrays Ezra as a beautiful woman with a pale complexion and long black hair. She is usually depicted in white robes and sometimes carries a long sword and shield. But who was Ezra? Exactly when she existed, and in what land of the mists has she walked in her mortal form? To this date, the historical proof of Ezra's existence is a matter of debate among theologians, scholars, and arcanists, and the myth of her origin points to an unknown land of a past time, which sacred texts refer only generally as the Land of the Mists. All the knowledge we have about the mysteries of Ezra comes from the epiphanies and revelations received by her devotees. Since Yaakov de Lisnia had his first revelation in 666 of the Barovian calendar, many have claimed to have received visions and epiphanies sent by the goddess. However, only 4 of these epiphanies are recognized as sacred texts of the faith. After going through the tests of the rite of revelation, each of these great revelations is transcribed in a book, and these are known as the Holy Book of Ezra. All of these books bring a new version of the origin myth of this goddess, and there are some contradictions between the interpretations of each of these books. These incongruities among the sacred texts of this faith make many detractors mock this creed, and many call Ezra the Pretender, a false goddess, followed by hallucinating fanatics. However, among the members of the Church of Ezra, there is an understanding that these sacred books are interpretations of their authors about the divine revelations of Ezra, and that none of her followers can claim to know the totality and truth of her mysteries. Among all the origin myths contained in these 4 sacred books, there are many points of congruence. Most of these myths say that Ezra was a mortal, and during her life, she took care of the sick, protected the weak, and fought the legions of the night. Ezra knew that everything that existed fulfilled a role in the great plan, and she was satisfied with her fate and lot in life. She knew that from the hollow, the mists of death would continue to expel the legions of the night, and she, like all mortals, would one day also perish. She then started to look for someone with a pure heart who could replace her in protecting her people. She wandered through all the lands of the mists, never finding a replacement. Knowing that after her death, her people would be helpless, she wandered through the Grey Lands until she reached the end of the world. Behind her were all the known lands, and in front of her was the mists of death. Ezra questioned the mists of death, why they allowed people to roam the world, lost and in pain, but she got no answer. She questioned the mists why they filled the world with the legions of the night, and likewise only obtained silence as an answer. She then told the mists of death that she had wandered the world in search of a new guardian, but had not found him. If the mist refused to protect her people, she would enter the hollow and continue to fulfill her role. The mist of death then manifested, warning Ezra to stay away, as she knew nothing about the nature of the mists or the great plan. If she entered the mists, she would sacrifice her mortal life, and she would never be able to return, being eternally trapped in this condition. Ezra then told the mists of death that through her they would know the pain and suffering of her people, and then sacrificed her life and identity as a mortal to become the keeper and guardian of humanity inside the mists. In addition to this origin myth, many controversies exist in the books about the meaning of Ezra's revelations and the role of the faithful in the great plan, and each of the sacred books and sects adopt a different interpretation and philosophy. The symbol of this goddess is a shield, on which are drawn a longsword and a wolfsbane sprig. Her clerics have as their preferred weapon the longsword, which is part of the symbol of their goddess, and may only wear metal armor or no armor at all, protected only by their faith in their goddess. The clerics of Ezra are called anchorites, although they may also have other titles designated according to duties performed in the organization of the church. They can summon the mists to form a shield of Ezra, a luminous blade of mists that protects their body, and that presents itself differently according to the sect to which the anchorite are aligned. The Lady of the Mists also grants her priests access to divine blessings and magic, and clerics of great power are even able to summon the power of their goddess and move through the mists, traveling between domains. Ezra watches and protects humanity from the mists, and her followers believe in the existence of a grand plan, where everyone must play their role. Thus, among all sects of Ezra, the concept of fate is common, and that Ezra grants prophecies and revelations to her devotees. The Church of Ezra meets for religious ceremonies every 5 days, and the faithful attend the church dressed in white, while the priests wear green and white robes during ceremonies. Each sect has its own holy days and religious festivals, but all celebrate the day of Yaakov Dislisnia's first epiphany. The Lady of the Mists has in her dogmas the protection of the weak, the care of the sick, and the fight against the legions of the night. However, there are different interpretations and views of Ezra's revelations within the church, which is divided between 4 sects. The home faith is in Borca, and has its headquarters in the great cathedral of Lev Karest. This was the first sect and was founded by Yaakov Dislisnia a few years after receiving the first epiphany with Ezra's revelation. Although each sect of Ezra has autonomy, all of them recognize the central authority of the home faith of Borca, where the presidios reside, the highest authority of the Church of Ezra. In terms of alignment, the Borka sect is lawful and neutral, and has existed under great political pressure since its foundation. In their actions of protection and charity, they distinguish those who are faithful and accept Ezra as their savior from those who do not believe in Ezra. They also do not actively go out to fight the forces of darkness, just trying to keep them at bay. The second sect was founded by a dissident group of the Home Faith and settled in modern Shire. Its headquarters is the modest Chapel of the Pure Hearts and has a lawful good alignment. This sect is dedicated to the widespread of Ezra's faith and believe that even the Legions of the Night should have a chance to redeem themselves and find Ezra's light. In the domain of the Monley, in the city of Port-a-Lucine, is the third sect of Ezra, located in the cathedral in ruins Sainte-Mère-de-Lames, and has a neutral alignment. This sect believes that Ezra has always been a goddess, and that the salvation of the faithful is a spiritual matter, not a physical one. They do not strive to win new believers or to fight the forces of darkness, and are dedicated to studying and delving into the mysteries of Ezra's faith. Finally, the most recent sect is located at Nevushar Springs in Darkon, and has a lawful evil alignment. With prophetic visions of a great cataclysm known as the Time of Unparalleled Darkness, they claim that only the truly devout will be saved, and act fervently to convert people to their faith, and to fight opponents of Ezra and the forces of darkness, among whom they do not make great distinction. All clergy in the church recognize themselves as anchorites. The highest authority of the church is the Presidius, which is also the bastion of the Home Faith in Borka. Each of the four sects is led by a bastion, the highest authority of that sect. Below the bastions are the Centaurs, clerics who are responsible for the great temples of Ezra, or for a region that encompasses several smaller temples. A leader of a single temple has the title of Torret, and the lowest member of the clerical hierarchy, who act as traveling members or in more basic activities inside the temples, are called wardens. Among the wardens, some became wanderers, anchorites who travel the lands of the mists, helping the needy and fighting the forces of darkness, and others become inquisitors, who investigate the horrors of this dark world, to discover and unmask the forces of darkness. Finally, there are also the speakers of Ezra. This group is made up of anyone who, regardless of their clerical vocation, is dedicated to spreading the word of Ezra and converting new believers. Although they are not anchorites and do not receive divine blessings from their goddess, these speakers are responsible for the great expansion of Ezra's faith in the lands of the mists. Ezra's faith began in the domain of Mordant, when Ezra's first revelation snatched Yaakov Disliznia in 666 of the Barovian calendar. Yaakov was the son of Lev Disliznia, a member of the noble family who for years lived in seclusion in Barovia, but with the unveiling of new lands by the mists, they started their diaspora and spread across many domains. When he was 25 years old, Yaakov suffered a seizure while riding, and after waking up from a feverish period, he woke up saying he was the messenger of a deity named Ezra. Still bedridden, he wrote the first book of Ezra, containing the first revelations of his goddess, and telling her origin myth and teachings. For many years, Yaakov tried to propagate the words of his new faith and religion, but he was seen as a crazy and fanatical, and was unsuccessful. Yaakov had a younger sister named Camille. She was a beautiful young woman, polite and kind at first sight, but given to outbreaks of jealousy and anger. At just 19 years old, she had her marriage arranged with a boyar from Barovia, Siegfried Grimning. After 3 years of marriage, Camille discovered that her husband had an affair, and using traditional methods and ancient secrets from her family, she poisoned him. Fearing that the modern authorities would discover Camille's crime, her parents dispatched her in a carriage for distant relatives in the kingdom of Unveil. Her carriage never reached its destination, being enveloped by the mists. In 684 of the Barovian calendar, Camille Boritzi's carriage was carried by the mist to the lands of Borca, the ancestral region that was once ruled by the Disliznia in the past. Camille Disliznia, arrival in Borca, shook the kingdom's power structures. Camille proved her heritage and lineage and became the absolute ruler of Borca. After ascending to power, she summoned her relatives in exile to her kingdom just unveiled by the mists. Soon, the Disliznia, long isolated and scattered throughout the lands of the mists, returned to Borca, bringing wealth, trade, power, and influence. Yakov Disliznia, her older brother, saw in his sister's rise to power an opportunity to finally fulfill the role imposed on him by his goddess, and spread Ezra's fate. Yakov's fate was sincere, but he was also a Disliznia, and he knew how to play games of intrigue and manipulation. He wanted to spread his vision in Borca, who had long since forgotten Androl's ancient fate, and for that he would need Camille's support. He tried to convert his sister to his faith, but being unable to insert devotion into Camille's cold heart, he convinced her that supporting Ezra's religion would be a tool for controlling the masses. Camille was convinced by Yakov and sponsored the construction of the Great Cathedral, a project that would take more than 50 years to complete. Yakov Disliznia started preaching about Ezra, while that site was still on construction on the skeleton of the structure. The preaching of Yakov found Borca peasants eager for his revelation, and the faith underwent a rapid expansion. In 688 of the Barovian calendar, when Camille married Klaus Boritzi, it was Yakov Disliznia who celebrated their marriage, with the blessings of Ezra. And the religion also began to gain popularity with the aristocracy and nobility of Borca. Many began to dedicate themselves to the clerical career, and received the blessings of their goddess, and the first anchorites joined the church. While the Great Cathedral continued with its grandiose construction project, other smaller churches were erected in Sturban and other cities in Borca. As he gained power and influence, Yakov organized the Church of Ezra, becoming the first presidius, the highest authority of the faith. Camille came to envy the growing popularity of her brother Yakov, who had gradually come to be seen as a holy man, while Borca's ruler faced the disgruntled and treacherous Borcan aristocracy, always thirsting for more power. Camille's fear about the loyalty of her closest relatives were not unfounded, and she had repeatedly uncovered conspiracies against her government. In her intimate life, Camille also suffered from betrayals. Her first marriage ended with the murder of her husband by poisoning after the discovery of a betrayal. The same fate befell her second marriage to Klaus Boritzi. Her third husband, Stefan Tarayan, also betrayed Camille, but managed to escape of Borca with his life before facing revenge. In 698, Camille tried to cure her frustrations with a new marriage with Ole Fortish. Ole, however, tried to assassinate Camille shortly after the wedding, but the astute ruler managed to avoid the attack and cornered Ole. Her murderous husband begged for his life and confessed that he was just a pawn in a wide conspiracy of her entire family, who intended to take power in Borca. Although we may never know whether Ole was telling the truth about this conspiracy, or seeking only to blame others, Camille showed no forgiveness and poisoned Ole. Then, Fearing that her entire family was conspiring against her, she poisoned everyone who attended her husband's funeral. This macabre act by Camille wiped out many members of the Disliznian lineage, including their older brother Yakov. Perhaps the only member of her family who was truly loyal to Camille during her reign, Yakov was killed by Camille's paranoia and madness. In addition to losing her brother and ally, Yakov's death caused great popular commotion, and many directly accused Camille of the murder of their religious leader. Advised by her closest allies to ease the situation, under pain of facing a popular revolt, Camille tried to dissociate herself from her brother's death, making generous donations to the Church of Ezra, and ordering the construction of a statue of Yaakov in the courtyard of the great cathedral. Behind the scenes, however, these gifts came linked to threats to the high members of the church, to calm the mood of the population. These internal pressures, bribes and threats from Camille, as well as the exploitation of the late Yaakov's image, caused a schism in the church. A faction of the church understood that all these trials were part of the great plan of Ezra, that the church could never survive in conflict with Camille Borizzi. They claimed that they should accept her donations and conditions as a means of ensuring the survival and expansion of the faith, and be careful not to have the cruel ruler as their enemy. A second group, however, was opposed to taking Camille's bribe and claimed that the construction of a statue of Yaakov, even before the great cathedral was completed, was a blasphemy for the dogmas of the faith. The first group won the schism, and the Church of Ezra received the donations from Camille to calm the rebellious spirits of the population. The dissident members of the faith, led by Felix Watcher from the Church of Sturban, decided to break away from the home faith and leave the lands of Borca, where they would never be safe from Camille's treacherous poisons. Felix Watcher left Borca in 698 with some of his allies and followers, and went to Mordant, where he established a new headquarters for the Church of Ezra. There, he began to preach a new, more open and compassionate view of Ezra's faith. In the year 699 of the Barovian calendar, he claimed to have received visions and revelations about his faith. Based on these views, he wrote the second book of Ezra. The second book of Ezra revealed a more merciful face of the goddess, and her followers understood that Ezra's words and charity must be extended to all, and that even the creatures of darkness should have a chance to redeem themselves in the light of Ezra. The schism in Ezra's church lasted for years. The home faith of Borca accused the clergy of Mordant as heretics, and in turn was accused by the priests of Mordant of having become a corrupt church. For 10 years, these two sects were bitter rivals, but ended up reconciling over time. The clerics of both sects still received divine powers from their goddess, in a clear sign that Ezra did not favor one view over the other. However, members of the Mordant sect were able to cast a different form of the shield of Ezra. The compromise concluded that Felix Watcher had a real revelation from the goddess, and that he had devised a new facet of the grand plan. The Mordant sect was considered as a new and legitimate interpretation of Ezra's revelation, and they were reinstated as a new bastion of the faith, linked to the home faith of Borca and the authority of the Presidios. The acceptance of a new revelation and the opening of a new bastion of the faith caused the sects to create a procedure to test the legitimacy of new revelations of their goddess. The right of revelation was established to prove if a claim of a new Ezra revelation should be considered legitimate. Every year, several people try to present to the home faith in Borca a new revelation received from Ezra. But most of these revelations are dismissed as fraud or result of insanities. To prove that an Ezra's revelation is legitimate, the visionary must go through the steps of the rite of revelation. The visionary must first write the revelations he received from the goddess, and present a manuscript, written in his own hand for analysis by the home faith in Burqa. Then, he must conjure a new manifestation of the shield of Ezra, and show that his vision receives the endorsement of the goddess, as a new and valid interpretation of her teachings. Finally, he must show that at least 6 apprentices of this new doctrine has also managed to conjure this new manifestation of Ezra's shield. With the first schism in the church healed, Ezra's fate continued its rapid expansion into the lands of the mists. The core itself seemed to be going through the period of great expansion, and over the years, innumerable lands were unveiled by the mists, expanding the great continent. In 707 of the Barovian calendar, Demolished lands were unveiled by the mists, a fact that at first was irrelevant to the Church of Ezra. Soon some anchorites were sent on expeditions to Demoli to explore these lands and propagate Ezra's words. One of these explorers, Joan Secus, brought intriguing revelations. In the center of the capital, Port Alucine, she found a ruined cathedral called Sainte Mère des Larmes, or the Holy Mother of Tears. Researching the place, she discovered that it belonged to a forgotten faith that adored a goddess whose name has been lost in time, whose creed had disappeared 400 years ago, and only the ruins remain. Exploring the cathedral, Joan found a stained glass window still intact in the ruins, with an image surprisingly similar to Ezra's image and iconography. The stained glass image soon revealed to have supernatural powers. Those with pure hearts who prayed before the image were sometimes cured of their afflictions and diseases, but those of malicious heart could also be punished with ills for their pleas. After these revelations, both sects sent emissaries to study this ruined church, and they found secret passages that lead to a large underground network of tunnels and rooms. In one of these rooms, a sealed environment was found, where there were countless scrolls and records preserved for more than 500 years. The discoveries shook the religious community, and Joan claimed that she had discovered the lost teachings and texts that had been written by Ezra herself. Joan even accused Yaakov of having somehow obtained a copy of these documents, and distorted and simulated the teachings in his epiphany. These accusations were promptly countered by the home faith, and Joan was accused of heresy. However, the priestess presented to the home faith a manuscript with a new book of Ezra, claiming to have received important revelations from her goddess. Her allegations were submitted to the right of revelation, and to the surprise and indignation of many, Joan and her loyal supporters managed to conjure a new form of Ezra's shield, and she became the bastion of a new Ezra sect. The third book of Ezra tells how the goddess occupies the hollow, from which all the gods had withdrawn, and took on many facets to serve as a guide and guardian of mortals. The demolished sect takes a neutral alignment, and believes that all the gods worshipped by men in the lands of the mists are somehow a facet of Ezra. Established in the ruins of the cathedral and in its undergrounds, they dedicate themselves to the study of the texts and relics found in these tunnels, which they believe to be Ezra's own words and teachings. They do not dedicate themselves to the propagation of Ezra's faith, or even to the fight of the legions of the night, seeking to deepen theological studies on the hidden mysteries of the faith. This esoteric side of this sect is criticized by the home faith and the modern sect, but whenever a new restoration of its ancient manuscript is unveiled, it becomes the subject of great debate and speculation among the clergy. Esoterics and religious of these sects are very interested in symbology and numerology, and noted the importance of the number 5 in Ezra's iconography. Many believe that Ezra will send 5 major revelations before a major event strikes the lands of the mists. For more than 30 years, The Church continued without further revelations, until the Land of the Mist was swept away by the events of the Grand Conjunction. The great Cathedral of Ezra in Levkarest remained largely unscathed, but these events shook the minds of many of its followers. One of these anchorites was Theodore Raines, who had come from the distant lands of Darkon to study at Levkarest. He had a bleak view of reality, and went on to argue that the Grand Conjunction was an attempt by the Mists of Death to expel Ezra from the Mists, and an omen of great evil to come. Theodore's dark visions were not shared by other members of the Home Faith, and he soon left Levkarest, returning to his homeland, Darkon. His fanatical preaching found only few followers in his homeland, and he suffered aggressions from members of the Eternal Order. Throughout the lands of Darkon he traveled, converting only a few with his teachings. Theodore Raines became even darker, and he was more aggressive in his preaching. He claimed that he had received visions and prophecies from Ezra, and that she had warned him about the time of unparalleled darkness, when a great evil would befall the lands of the Mists, and the legions of night would claim the living, and only the devotees of Ezra would be saved. These dark warnings were seen as the preaching of a madman, until the events known as the Requiem, or the Green Harvest, devastated the city of Il Aluk, transforming the largest city in the lands of the Mists into a necropolis, filled with the undead. This tragedy gave legitimacy to Theodore's preaching, and while the Eternal Order was going through a crisis, he began to attract more and more believers to the faith of Ezra. He and a band of his fanatical followers invaded and expelled the priests of the Eternal Order from their temple at Nevushar Springs, where he established the center of his sect in the temple known as the Last Redoubt. Shortly thereafter, Theodore Raines returned to Levkarest with his followers, and presented a new book of Ezra, with its dangerous revelations about the arrival of the time of unparalleled darkness. His gloomy revelations were accompanied by proof of the development of a new shield of Ezra, and the rite of revelation confirmed yet another sacred epiphany. Theodore Raines' prophecies point out that in about 2 decades, a great evil would befall the world, and the legions of night will come to reap the living. Only those truly devoted to Ezra would be saved, and it's up to the devotees to convert people to the faith and to fight the infidels and the forces of darkness. The sect is aggressive in its attempts at conversion, and only extends its support to those who convert to Ezra's faith, saying that the infidels are beyond the salvation of their goddess. Many claim that their combat to the dark forces does not distinguish members of other creeds from the legions of the night, that in the cellars of the Last Redoubt, supernatural creatures are tortured to reveal their weakness. Many who delve into esoteric and numerology studies believe that a 5th Ezra Epiphany will be revealed before the cataclysmic events predicted by Theodore Raines, and this last sect will bring Ezra's final message to her devotees, finally revealing the grand plan. This view is considered heretical, and many other heresies of the faith can be found among the followers of Ezra. Most of these heretics have found refuge in the forests of Rishmullah, known as the House of the Sages, a place that is reputed to harbor esoteric orders, cultists and heretics. The heretics of Ezra are a diverse group, and they range from harmless interpretations to followers who intend to ascend to a status of power and divinity as their goddess. The Danseurs Divines, or the Divine Dancers, believe that they can commune with the divine power of their goddess by ritualistically repeating her acts. L'Abbé de Fleur-Louison, or the Abbé of the Bright Scourge, believes that the material possessions are instruments of the forces of darkness and corruption, and takes strict vows of poverty. La Balise, or the heresy of the Avatar, believe that when the Grand Conjunction took place, Ezra began to walk again in her mortal form through the lands of the mists, and spared no effort to find the avatar of the goddess. Another heretical group, known as Ancients or the Cup Holders, believed that Ezra had children in her mortal life, and that her sacred and divine power has been passed down through her lineage. They believed that one of these descendants would one day rise to become a great king and unite all nations towards a bright future. Many of these heretics study ancient texts and mystical signs to try to find this Messiah, and many nobles in Richmulaw have already understood the possible implications and political power that could be gained from these heretical interpretations. None of these heresies, however, has ever been submitted and approved by the rites of revelation, and are expressly condemned by the home faith and by other sects. Not even among the established sects of Ezra can a peaceful environment be found. In the home faith of Borca, the great cathedral has always been subject to constant political pressure, and the recent elected Presidius, Levin Postoya, has been astute in circumventing and balancing the conflict interests of the nobility and rulers of this domain. However, a secret cabal has come together to conspire within the church, which call itself the Scions of Jacob Disliznia. This group is composed of nobles with little or no chance of inheriting their family fortunes, that saw on the clerical path a chance to rise in power, and they plot to use the influence of the Church of Ezra on the masses to increase their own power and wealth in Borca and other kingdoms. In Mordant, the Chapel of the Pure Hearts also goes through times of uncertainty. An old anchorite named Lacresse claims to have received a prophetic vision from Ezra, warning him of a great threat. In this vision, he was warned that the sect in Darkon had been infiltrated by an evil creature, and that in the future they will lead a crusade against the Mordant sect, massacring the faithful. He was then tasked with protecting his sect. After informing the sect leaders of these revelations, they secretly began to recruit the Blessed Army of Ezra, men of arms devoted to Ezra, who act as protectors of the faith. All members of this Blessed Army are informed of Lacresse's vision and prepare for the day when they will be called to defend the Mordant sect. In the Monley, the rumors surrounding this esoteric sect are disturbing. Some claim that in the ruins of some married alarms, 3 other sealed rooms containing ancient scrolls had already been found, and the deeper halls of the catacombs are still being explored by members of the sect. However, the silence of the anchorites about these new discoveries is revealing. Rumors point that many anchorites, while looking at the mystical meanings of these texts, found their discoveries to become increasingly strange and disturbing. Ezra's fate also suffers in its relationship with other religions established in the lands of the mists. Although their coexistence for the most part is peaceful, the witches of Hala have already been considered as practitioners of black magic by past addicts of the home faith in Borca, and are actively condemned by the Darkon sect. The witches of Hala believed that the mortal Ezra was one of the sacred priestesses of their faith before entering the mists, which is considered a grave heresy by most anchorites. In Darkon, the growing tension between Theodore Rain's sect and the Eternal Order are escalating, and the dispute over the hearts and minds of the Darkonians may soon become more violent. Finally, there is a growing rivalry between the Church of Ezra and the Church of Bane, the Lawgiver, the dominant creed in the eastern kingdoms of Hazlan and Nova Vaza. These two religions have a growing animosity, which is further aggravated by the preaching of the Iron Faith, which attests that the deities of Hala and Ezra are merely concubines of their god Bane. After hearing our confession, Torrent Johann looked at us with sadness and pity. with the voice of a wise man of faith, he preaches that even though we are walking along a dark path full of dangers, the light of Ezra may shine upon us. Those who consort with creatures from lower planes only find suffering and darkness as a reward. If the bargain we made with Ahira was not yet complete, perhaps there was a way to break this agreement. Dorothy Johann was unaware of how to deal with this evil force, but he asked us to leave immediately for Mordant to search for the aid of the great scholar and monster hunter, Dr. Rudolf van Richten. Despite his encouraging words, we warned Dorothy Johann that the dark pact we made was precisely to prevent our transformation into wolf beasts under the brightness of the full moon, and that by breaking the agreement with Ahira, in addition to putting our souls at risk, we would return to be cursed werewolves. If arriving in Mordant would be impossible before the next full moon transformation, perhaps it would be possible to find the aid of a closer ally, an expert on the study of the curse of lycanthropy. Dorothy Johann revealed to us that in Rishmural there is a mage named Aurek Nuikin, a man broken by tragedy and consumed by desire for revenge, that has been studying for a long time about the lycanthropes that inflict that land. Despite offering us two possible means of salvation, he realizes our fear and hesitation in breaking the holy pact with the Arcanoloth in Ahira. With sorrow in his voice, he also revealed to us another path. If it is the Amulet of Souls you seek to fulfill your dark bargain, I can tell you where to find it. The last person who carried this artifact was an anchorite from Ezra named Raphael, a sacred inquisitor who traveled to a cursed place with the intention of exorcising the evil that resided there. 10 years ago, he entered the haunted house of the House of Laments and never returned. His body and the artifact are still lost in the house of the abandoned mansion. If the unholy pact with Ahira you wish to fulfill, your path will involve exploring this abandoned mansion located in the forests on the western part of Borca. Dorothy Johann let us remain hidden in the cellars of the great cathedral for a few days, until our pursuers give up on finding us. When at last we leave the cathedral in the dead of night, he said goodbye to us, wishing good luck and reminding us that however difficult the path may be, we should seek the road to redemption. After leaving Levkarest, we head west towards Rishmural. We move away from the city landscape and cross a remote region of hills and forests. Doubt plague our hearts as we travel. Dorothy Johann's words weigh on our minds, and we ponder for a long time on which path to follow. Should we risk our souls and break our promise to Ahira, and seek the salvation of our bodies and spirits with the help of other brave heroes from the mists? Or now that we know the location of the Amulet of Souls, we must venture into an abandoned and haunted mansion and seek a quick solution to our torments, fulfilling our whole in the unholy pact. As if fate itself mocks our doubts, we discover in the woods the old walls of an abandoned property. Behind these walls, we see a huge mansion attached to an ancient stone tower, whose windows seem to be watching us maliciously. Something evil and powerful seems to call for us, and we are drawn to the gates of this dark building. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and activate notifications, and together we'll explore the haunted corridors of the House of Laments.